Rick, so let's talk about the early years. You got your JD from the Rutgers University and you started your own company, just you and your wife. Why did you decide to start your own firm right off the bat?
So yeah, I started back in August of 1994 with my own firm. It was just my wife and I in a small executive center, and I guess I always had a desire to be my own boss, and I didn't. I had worked for another attorney, and I wasn't crazy about some of the stuff that I was asked to do, like go here on short notice, go there on short notice. So so that was why I decided to start my own firm. It was an interesting time.
That's great. My parents wanted me to go to college, and and I told them, I was like, just so you know, I'll get a degree, but I'm starting my own business. And it sounds like that you
Yeah.
that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. So
Definitely.
what were those early days like with just the husband and wife team? How were you hustling to get those first clients? What was kind of that situation like?
Yeah, it was interesting because we worked together from the very beginning. Our work relationship was a pretty natural extension of our marriage. I know a lot of times when we tell people that we work together, they say, "How can you stand to work with your spouse?" But since we did it from the very beginning, it was just very natural. And initially, we were just going by whatever happened to walk in the door or call on the phone. It was we were doing just a general practice, and the phone rang, and that was exciting.
Mhm.
We were happy just to get a few cases in the beginning, but we had very low overhead at that point too.
Yeah, and I gotta applaud you there on the relationship with your wife. It's like myself. I find that there's like a disconnect, right? Because my wife doesn't really know about the business and tries to be involved. And it's just different when you're living, because it's so much time of your day and life spent at work. Uh, and then the other, so I guess those first calls were just gold. You really gave them your entire focus, because in the volume situation, it's like, hey, we need to really handle these with care.
Yeah, in the beginning, I was doing everything. So I was doing billable work, civil work, and criminal defense, and the whole nine yards. And after the first couple of years, I realized I sort of gravitated towards personal injury. I guess for a couple reasons. One was I felt like I was really helping the clients a lot. I felt like I was helping the clients a lot because in some of the other things like bankruptcy and divorce, um, there was people weren't exactly happy at the end of the case generally. Um, Whereas with personal injury, it ended with a check in their hand, and they seemed pretty happy about that. So I guess that was one of the reasons. And plus, it was a lot easier to get paid on personal injury because you would get a fraction of what you recovered for them, and you didn't have to constantly work on billing people hourly. So I like that as well. But I think the biggest part that I liked was when I would meet with a new personal injury client, and they would come in and they were banged up, and their car was totaled, and they can't work, and they don't know how they're going to pay their bills. They have all these medical bills mounting, and they're worried about their family. And my favorite part was sitting down with them in the beginning of the case, and I would spend about an hour and a half with them at the initial meeting, and I would explain everything to them about New Jersey law and what they were up against, and how the insurance company was going to do everything they could to not give them the money they deserved. And um, that meeting, that was my absolute favorite part of the practice, taking people from a situation where they're in suffering, and they don't know where to turn, and they're very upset about their future, to a point where by the time they left the meeting, they felt very, very confident that things were going to be okay. That was I think that really drew me to personal injury, because I was drawn to moving people away from suffering. And and then the arc of the entire case is like that too, because you're helping them all along the way. And then at the end, you're getting the compensation. So it really resonated with me, the whole process.
Yeah, I can't even imagine being a bankruptcy or criminal defense attorney or divorce attorney and being in some of those situations where just no one's like, there's not a happy ending at the end. It's like, okay, well, we agree and we part ways. You know, you finally get to that middle ground. But with personal injury, yeah, once you do get them the compensation to deserve and it changes their life, and it's got to just be a really great feeling.
Yeah, nobody's happy at the end of a divorce.
Yeah. So, speaking of personal injury, and you niching down to personal injury. So one of the things, what do you and your team do to ensure great customer care?
What I've tried to do over the years is instill a lot of that initial customer care that I had developed when I only had a small number of clients. I tried to train the staff to handle cases that way. So I tried to train them on the intake process and how to stay in touch with clients and how to just make sure that the client's expectations were appropriate and that they were happy throughout the arc of the case. But it's not always easy to replicate that. I actually ended up growing the firm to over 30 employees. And it got to the point where it was almost impossible to keep that same level of, and I know there are firms out there that seem to be able to do it, but I wasn't able to continue to maintain that same level of quality with that many employees and that many clients. So we ended up scaling down a couple of years ago to about 10 employees, and it's a much more comfortable situation.
Yeah, and with that, with that scaling down, and you just feel like you just have you're more connected to the staff and can pass on a little bit easier your values and the way that you like to do things. Is that part of it? I guess making that decision is really tough and challenging. Let's go through that scenario, because I've wondered it myself. When you approach these individuals, was it a candid conversation of like, here's the direction we're going? Like, tell us about that. I'm sure our audience would kind of be interested in hearing that side.
Yeah. There were a lot of other factors in the scale down that's probably beyond the scope of our of what your listeners want to hear. But it was tough because I had built a lot of close relationships with the staff, and it was definitely not easy. I never liked to terminate anybody. It's always was the most unpleasant part of running the firm for the last 25 years. But it's been so nice to be able to get down to just a core group of the best team that we've ever had, and
Wonderful.
And a lot of the people that were like, I guess a lot of firms, they could look at their staff and there's probably a bell curve, and there's people that are that are the best, and there's people that are so, and it was nice to be able to just keep the very best people.
Yeah, speaking on that, I heard something on a podcast literally today, and I just thought it was so intriguing, where there was a question that you ask yourself, would that person be able to do the job if their life depended on it? And if the answer is yes, and they're not doing it, maybe it's a motivation thing. If the answer is no, maybe they just don't have the capacity to do it. And I thought that was really interesting. And it's just, I think the hardest thing is just dealing with staff, because we have these emotional ties, and then you kind of stress about the conversation. But then once you do it, it's like that 48 hours of pain. And then you're like, okay, well, that stunk. I had to do this, but now it's better.
Yeah, I think I took solace in there was a book by Jack Welch, Chainsaw Jack from General Electric, and but I liked the sentiment. I guess basically the way it went was that if you're keeping somebody in a job where they're not doing well, they know they're not doing well, their fellow employees know that they're not doing well. They're probably not that happy to be there, but they're just sort of twisting in the wind because they're not ready to take the next step, you're basically moving them towards a situation where they are going to be able to find a good fit. And the longer that you keep them in that twisting in a wind type situation, it's not really helping anybody. It's not helping you. It's not helping the rest of the staff, and it's not helping them. So I think that's a good way to look at it. I think that's a true way to look at it. That might sound like a rationalization, but I've come to believe that that's accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's switch over to the, on your website, and just knowing your firm, you treat every case as if it's going to trial. Not all law firms do that. They don't work up the case. They're happy with just going and doing the pre-lit and just settling. And, what does this mean to your practice? How do you approach a case that you work up like it's going to trial?
Mm-hmm. Well, what we've realized is that over the years, it's been more and more difficult to obtain adequate fair compensation for clients without litigation. It seems that insurance companies have become more and more reluctant to put any sort of significant money on a claim without kicking the tires a bit and going through a discovery process. So knowing that we're going to have every single case in litigation in order to maximize the value, we just sort of gear things towards that from the very beginning, as opposed to gearing for some quicker outcome that just won't yield the best result for the client.
Yeah, I had Harlan Schillinger on a previous podcast, and he said that even the insurance companies keep a log of which firms and which attorneys take cases to trial, and even just having someone on staff with their name on the paper may kind of increase some of that value.
Right. Yeah. They've insurance companies have been using algorithms like that for years, and I imagine it's only ramped up now that we're in the age of the algorithm and artificial intelligence.
Right. So, you've been running Console and Associates since '94. So clearly you're doing something right, and your audience, who may be a little earlier along in their careers, they're just starting off. Maybe they want to pursue being their own boss or entrepreneur. What do you know now that you wish someone had told you when you just started out?
That's pretty interesting. I guess there's a number of things. One would be to try to hire good people. That I mean, for a lot of years, I would hire people based on what they could do, in a legal capacity. And what I came to realize over the years is that, and this is actually referenced in a number of recent business books, but you don't just want somebody for their ability to do a particular part of the work that's needed in a law office. It's much better to hire people based on their values and their personality and how you get along with them and whether they're actually good people. Because over the years, we've hired a lot of people that were excellent at what they did, and then they would drive you crazy. They're super needy, or they're high maintenance. They didn't get along with other staff members, stuff like that. And so that was one thing. One piece of advice I would definitely give is try not to hire just based on performance in a vacuum. You really have to focus on hiring good people. People that really care and people that are good at their core. I guess another thing would be to focus on marketing, because you could be the best at what you do, but if you don't have adequate marketing, you'll never get a chance to tell the world about it. So I think marketing is an important aspect that not all attorneys value.
Yeah, one of my peers, Michael Mogul, says something like, "You don't want to be the best kept secret. Best known is better than best every time, because at least the consumer knows about you."
Right. Yeah, that's definitely something that I wish I had known from the very beginning as well.
Absolutely. So let's talk about niching. So you chose personal injury, and before you started, your general practice, and you took kind of all the cases. If you had to start over, do you think it's important to start in a niche, or would you say, hey, get the reps in, figure out? David Epstein has this book called Range. It says, why generalists succeed in a
Hmm.
specialized world, or something like that.
Hmm.
Where
Yeah,
he's
I've heard
saying,
that one.
yeah, where Nadal did all these sports and then found out he was good at tennis. So then he pursued tennis versus just going into one sport that maybe you weren't the best at. So do you think it's important to start in a niche, or maybe work in a number of areas first?
I think it was beneficial for me to try my hand in a bunch of different fields early on. I think that was, as I was talking about, kind of instrumental in finding that the personal injury practice was more um, along the lines of the way that I liked. I really liked, meeting with clients and moving them away from a suffering state. And then I also really liked them being happy at the end. So if I hadn't tried personal injury, and I hadn't tried the opposite of it, where people are very upset at the end of a divorce case or things like that, I wouldn't have known. So I definitely agree. And I've always been, I've heard there was a number of books that talk about this whole fox hedgehog dichotomy between people that are, and I think that the book that originally talked about the fox and the hedgehog was saying be a hedgehog and just focus in on one thing the whole time. But I feel like if you don't also have an eye across the range of potential activities, you could really end up you could end up doing something for your entire career that really might not be something that you enjoy doing.
Yeah, I think the good to great, that hedgehog concept. I think it's
Hmm.
like just a good exercise. It's the Venn diagram, the three circles, where what you think you can be the best at, what you have passion in, and what you can make a profit in for business. And I think that if any of those are missing, you're in trouble. But especially if passion's missing, then what are we doing? With our time. So I think
Right.
from
Right.
what I'm hearing from you, it's like, well, your values really align with personal injury.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. It's especially versus a lot of these other potential fields.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you, so another couple follow-up questions. Did you see that, like, when you shifted from a general practice to personal injury, did you see like an operational improvement with like efficiencies and systems being easier, since, you weren't doing a number of different things, and now you could really focus and refine those operations? Did that have an impact, maybe on just your time and how you're working up a case and things like that?
Yeah, it was a huge help because when you're trying to do, trying to be a general practice firm that helps clients with whatever legal matter they happen to have. In fact, I don't even know if that would be possible today, given the way things have changed. But um, yeah, the operational advantage of being focused was really huge. It was hard in the very beginning when I first started transitioning from other areas of law to turn the work away. It was a bit of a leap of faith, but uh, the economies of scale and the operational efficiencies of having people that are doing the same thing again and again. And that's why sometimes over the years I've not experimented as much maybe as I might otherwise have done with other areas of law, just thinking, I have a whole team that's focused on this particular type of work. And then it's like you you come up with an entirely different thing, then you got to retrain everybody on how to do it, and there's a learning curve, and it can be really disruptive. So um, yeah, there was a huge operational efficiency, and I didn't have to. I got away from all the problems associated with billable hours, which was uh, again didn't really jive well with my personality either. Like
Right.
to turn on the timer when somebody called and you know uh, constantly be sending out invoices, and then some people don't pay. It just was the billable work had another set of headaches as well. So yeah, this was something that I think is a good area to focus in.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than when you got money out on the street, so to speak, and you got to hunt them down for the money. There's nothing worse than that.
It was horrible.
Yeah, so shifting over to personal. So you grew up in New Jersey, you studied there, you grew your family there. You know, what do you love about New Jersey so much?
Yeah, I'm sort of looking out the window at this ice and sleet that we're getting today, and I've been asking myself that same question. Uh, but it's actually it's a great state. I mean, it's maligned with shows like the Jersey Shore and SNL, and it's got a bad reputation, I think. But it's actually, we're in southern New Jersey primarily, and we have the Jersey Shore, we have Philadelphia, so it's got that spectrum of nice outdoor places to be, as well as the metropolitan aspect that I find it's nice to have the stimulation of a major city. So it's got a lot of really good things going for it. And whenever we've traveled, we've always sort of felt like it was nice to visit other states, but there were things that we definitely missed about New Jersey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm here in St. Louis, and I'm asking myself the same question about looking out at the snow and the sleet. But I'm in. Well, I'm actually close to St. Louis, so I've got the city there close, and then I've got more like a suburb. So I'm kind of find myself thinking that same way. Um,
Mhm.
and then also, so you know, you mentioned you do meditation, and I've heard Tim Ferriss talk about meditation. I've heard a lot of individuals, and I've just found it personally myself like hard to think of just establishing a time to meditate.
Mhm.
So talk to me a little bit about that and what you found adding that to your personal life.
Yeah, so I was exactly like that up until about 3 years ago. I was always, I read all these books, and it seemed like a very obvious fundamental thing to do to meditate. It's recommended by everyone, and it's got all these benefits. But to actually sit down and do it, it was hard to get into a routine with it because it was boring, and it was hard to just sit there and what do? Do nothing, try to think of nothing. It just seemed very tedious, and I was never really able to do much with it. But then about 3 years ago, and it kind of corresponded with the time that I decided to shrink down the firm to a more manageable and I guess more of a close knit type firm. I, I was going through a period of a lot of stress, and I started meditating every day for anywhere between like a half an hour and 90 minutes. And amazing things flowed from that. So there's like very like more superficial stuff where you can concentrate better, you can you're generally happier, things sort of roll off you, things that otherwise might bother you aren't that big of a deal. But I also and I don't know if you want to take your podcast a turn into the more esoteric stuff, but
Sure.
I guess this is sort of become part of the national conversation with Sam Harris and other people that are talking about the nature of enlightenment. But I had pretty amazing experiences with the meditation. And I think it can be explained even if you're only looking at it from a purely scientific perspective. And basically what I realized was that there's an area in your left brain It's a module that's been identified both by physiologists and by psychologists as this interpreter module. And basically what it does is it's responsible for either the little voice in your head that's like, oh, I should be doing this, or I shouldn't be doing that, or sort of like that's second guessing you, and that's always judging, did I get enough done today, or all these little judgments that we end up making every day in every interaction we have, all comes from this module. And really, as a result of this brain area, we end up, or many people end up in a suffering state because they feel like they can never measure up, or they feel like they're not good enough, or they feel like they're regretting something that happened in the past, or they're worried about something that's going to happen in the future. And what was really interesting is about 90 days into this daily meditation, I was able to sort of lull that brain area to sleep. So that chatter all stopped, and not that it hasn't come back every single day since, but it was an amazing experience, because I was able to see a lot of things about reality without it being mediated by the left brain. There's a really interesting book. It's called A Stroke of Insight. I'm not sure if you heard of it, but it's by it was a Harvard psychologist, researcher, and she was actually a brain scientist, and she ended up having a stroke one morning, and it happened to be in that same left brain region that I'm talking about. And she said that when that happened, she had this, once that part of her brain was shut down, she went into this state, which is very much like the state that I achieved in meditation, where the interpreter module, or the egoic mind, if you will, just shut down. And the experience of everyday reality without that module going all the time, judging everything and saying, well, it would be better if this happened, or it could be, someday we'll be happy once we get X number of dollars, these types of things. Once that's not there, everything is actually perfect. And it's really strange, because people spend their entire lives struggling against the way the universe currently is. And through meditation, you could actually arrive at a state where you recognize that everything is perfect exactly as it is. And I think that whole concept is so alien to us because of this interpreter module.
So I read Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod's book, and he adds that to his miracle morning routine meditation. But even when I tried it, I felt odd, or didn't know if I was doing it right. So for our listeners, you mentioned the book, where would you start if they were interested in this?
There was, let's see, there's a very interesting book that was pretty instrumental. It has a series of guided meditations, and it's called, it's by Sally Kempton, and it's called Doorways to the Infinite. And it's a series of guided meditations, and it's actually based on this ancient Hindu text called the Vijnana Bhairava. And so, but I don't want to scare people off, because it's not like you have to switch your religion in order to try meditation out. But this book, it's sort of like tried and true methods to attain higher levels of meditation. And I think if it wasn't for that book, I'd probably be back to saying I can't do it. It's too annoying, and I guess because when you're able to get that level of peace and all the other benefits from it, you eventually become kind of addicted to it. So it's not so much finding a time to do it or disciplining yourself to do it as it is, you realize how much different you feel, when you skip it.
Wow. Hmm. That's really interesting. I've always thought that it was a little foo-foo or, a little, and so every time I tried it, I just wasn't in the right mindset. And I think that just hearing it so much, this is the second time I've heard it today, about meditation. It's like, maybe that's a sign that, hey, Chris, you need to take this serious. And hearing, your benefits and so many others too. It's like, geez, I really need to focus on it. Um, it's really interesting because you're right, where I think so many of us strive. You're like, oh, I hit this next level of wealth, I'll be okay then. And then you hit it, and you're like, oh, then I got to hit this next, and it's like, I think part of what I'm hearing is like, you need to like look at reality and like what your experiences you're having right now and how perfect they are right now, as opposed to what would happen in the future, those aspirational type situations.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We spend our whole lives in a state where we're like, well, it's not great yet, but someday it's going to be great. And this was another set of realizations that I had through the meditation, is that if you think about it, we're postponing all of our happiness into the future, and the future doesn't exist. It's a mental construct that there's a future, and it's a mental construct that there's a past. So people are spending their entire lives regretting the past and worrying about the future or planning for the future. And you could spend, your entire life in these, totally false mental constructs and never actually experience the bliss of the present moment. And being able to really, it's an amazing feeling to be able to, when I achieved that state, it just felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulder, because there was no more shoulds, and there no more, regret or fear of the future. It was just, you're in the present moment, and everything is perfect, and everything is beautiful exactly as it is. And then when I hear myself telling people that, and I look at it from, the normal perspective of the everyday person going about their business, and it just sounds crazy. What? Everything's perfect. How could everything be perfect? It's not going to. I have this problem. My back hurts, and this I gotta do this thing. And this didn't work out for me, or people that spend their whole lives living in the past or in the future. So, I really recommend taking that journey to seeing beyond the illusion of the egoic mind, because otherwise you're just going to spend your whole life in this quasi-suffering state, which kind of ties back to the reason that I got into personal injury law, right? I love to move people from a state of suffering to a state of knowing that everything will be okay. And what better way to do it than with meditation and recognizing that the suffering is false.
That's really powerful. And I think if we're going to take a clip, I think that one we would take. I really like that a lot. I think that's just incredibly powerful. Rick, as we come to a close, we have a segment called our 3 for 3. It's just a quick fire round. You kind of just go from the gut. And number one, which habit contributes the most to your success?
Well, I guess we covered that one, right? The meditation really does. I've read a whole bunch of books on habits, and I've been trying to integrate a bunch of them as far as exercise and fasting. They're all very helpful, but the meditation is definitely the number one thing.
Wonderful. Which entrepreneur do you admire the most?
I guess it's probably a cliche now, but I really admire Elon Musk. I think that he really is a visionary with regard to what's coming down the pike, and I also really admire that his motivation seems solely focused on trying to help the human race. I mean, he's already the richest man in the world, I believe, and could do whatever he wants. But meanwhile, he's working 80-hour weeks to try and make us multi-planetary species, so we don't wipe ourselves out. They just put a $100 million X Prize out for removing carbon from the atmosphere to help with global warming, and just to be able to run all those companies. I mean, I have my hands full with a 10-person company. I can't even get my brain around how he does what he does.
Yeah, I think there was an announcement when he became the richest person in the world. He's like, "Oh, that's interesting. Now time to go back to work."
Yeah.
I was like, geez, different mindset. So, and then final question here, which is the one business book that's changed your life or your career the most? Or both, or two books maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can see this is, I'm sort of showing you around in my library now, so you sort of get an idea.
Yeah, you have quite a library.
Thousands,
for sure.
Yeah, I got like thousands of books here, so it's really tough to narrow it down. I mean, some of the main ones, I really liked the 80-20 principle. I really feel like that's a fundamental observation, that 20% of the things will give you 80% of the results. And that's been very helpful. I think if there's what would be the second best one. It's purely business books, right?
Yeah, wherever you want to go.
I was reading a recent book that I don't know if this would be one of the best ones ever, but it's been helpful lately. It's called 80%. I think the author is Sullivan. But the basic idea of it was, it's more of a pamphlet. It's on Amazon. And it's funny because it's not, I thought when I first saw the title that it was like the 80-20 rule, something along those lines. But basically, what he said is that most people undermine their ability to get things done by being perfectionistic and wanting everything to be 100% perfect when they do it. And then because they're so worried about things being 100% perfect, they end up postponing things until they've done the proper preparation and things are exactly right. And that the net long-term effect of this is you end up not really accomplishing a lot of what you could accomplish because you're in this pattern of perfectionism and procrastination. And I've even though I've gotten a lot done in my life, I definitely have this in spades. I'm very perfectionistic, and I have a strong belief, or I had a strong belief, that if things, I'll just wait till things are just right for certain changes. And so I've been implementing this in my life a lot lately, and it's really proven to be very helpful, because you really don't need to have things at 100% perfection. And in fact, until you begin actually engaging in the task, it's difficult to even understand what it would take to make it 100% successful. So I've started to implement that. So that's got to be one of my favorite books, because it's helped me a lot right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we'll definitely link that up. That's one I'm going to check out for sure. I can imagine that would help probably from a delegation perspective too, just analyzing things a little bit differently and having people that can help you. And Rick, man, this has been an awesome conversation, and I didn't know we were going to go that route with meditation. I found that really intriguing and really interesting, actually, too. And I appreciate having you on the show. Is there anything else that we didn't ask you that you'd like to discuss?
No. Thank you so much for having me on. It was a real pleasure. This was my first podcast, and I'll send you the link to a couple of those books I mentioned in case you're interested. Maybe we can get you meditating.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Rick. Take care.
All right. Thanks. Take care.